Okay, Michael, I have pushed the live stream. Now you can make me co-host.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Michael.
Pleasure. How's your day been?
It's good. It's just going not so good, not so bad.
Okay. I know what
How's
you
your
mean.
day going?
Not so good, not so bad. You know what I mean.
Yeah.
Anyway, my last class, I only had one attendee. Yeah.
So it's your first class or fourth
So
class?
that was my first class. I had a late starting. My first class was my time, 10 a.m.
10 a.m. Oh, okay.
That's a very late start. And so
Uh,
anyway, it
so
is
this
what
class
it
is
is.
about growing microgreens in your home.
Yeah, microgreens in the home. Okay. Have you not attended one of those of mine?
Nah, it's my first.
Okay. Well, you're going to be growing microgreens by the end of the class.
I hope so.
Okay, let me just put my video on. Are you going to, I've paused the recording. Will you unpause it?
Yeah, sure. When the learners will come, I'll start the recording.
Yeah, that's great. It looks like everybody who booked into the class has fallen asleep. Brendan?
Yeah, Michael.
Let's see, there are quite a few people booked in, but not one has come through. Because we're live streaming, do you think we should start the lesson without anybody in class?
Just give them a minute. If they show
Okay.
up, then that'd be
I,
good. Otherwise, you'll start.
okay. I'm going to share my first screen and just wait there.
Okay, Michael, you can start the class.
Okay, I agree. Right. Well, welcome to all of those of you who are watching on social media somewhere. And at this moment, we're going to start with a subject called microgreens. And as you can see on the screen, you can see a bowl of microgreens, and that's what we're going to be talking about. And there's a lot to say about them. So if you're wise, you will keep watching. Okay. My name is Michael, and I am talking from Perth in Western Australia, where the time has just gone midday for those of you watching around the world. So yes, I'm an author, a researcher, been a business owner all my life, and a business mentor for business owners as well. So I thoroughly enjoy growing microgreens and also gardening. So let's start with the obvious question. What are microgreens? You can see the image on your screen of various microgreens growing, and they look luscious. They also have different colors and different textures and different leaves. Okay, and they, just by looking at the image, one gets a feeling that there's really something healthy going on here. So what are microgreens? They're basically just young vegetables that are harvested before they're allowed to grow into full-grown vegetables. That's the beginning and the end of microgreens. So you harvest them depending on the seed, because each seed is very different. I'm busy growing pea microgreens at the moment, and they're much taller than, let's say, the radishes. And so microgreens are basically considered baby plants, okay? And they fall somewhere between a sprout and a full-grown vegetable, in between. And the reason that we grow microgreens, and it's a very important reason, okay, and there are minor reasons, but this one is very important, as you see on your screen right now. Concentrated nutrient content, second to none, okay? And we're going to talk about it during, but we're also going to talk about the textures, the crunchiness, the colors, and so forth. All right. Now, like vegetables, microgreen fall into different categories. You can see each dot on the screen represents a category. So the first one I call the cabbage for the sake of being able to identify it. And the second one I call the aster family because it has lettuce and endives and chicory in them. And then, of course, the third one, I couldn't come up with a creative name. They called it a carrot family, okay, because they all have similar characteristics. So the fourth one, as you can see on the list on the screen, being garlic, onion, and leek, allium is what I call that bunch of vegetables and microgreens. Okay, and then the second last one, of course, you look at it and you can just see green leafy is what I call it, a green leafy family. And lastly, the gourd family, which is melon, cucumber. You can also grow microgreens with rice, with wheat, with corn, with barley, and as well as legumes like chickpeas. I particularly like microgreen chickpeas. They grow quickly and they never let you down, basically. And you can also, have microgreens with beans and lentils. A little bit more difficult to grow, maybe those last two, but they do grow and they can grow. So you can see in the image here on that these are radishes. So it gives you an idea, but there are different types of radishes. So the different types of radishes definitely will give you a different look, a different color even. Okay, so be aware of that. So let's look at the difference between a sprout and a microgreen, okay? And you can see from looking at the image that the sprout is on the left and the green of the microgreen is on the right of your picture. And the sprouts on the left are, you eat what you see, basically. You eat the seed, you eat the sprout, and it's got a certain amount, well, it's got a lot of nutrition depending on the seed. But the microgreen has the same nutrient, let's say, as the sprout until it starts sprouting leaves. And those leaves now are adding another element of the health for you because it's now interacting with the light, okay? And its roots are also interacting with the medium in which you plant them. So that's why the microgreen is definitely more nutritious than the sprout. And the microgreen, if you leave it in the sun for a couple of hours a day, you will also have that interaction between the chlorophyll in the leaves and the sun itself, which now is adding another dimension of goodness for a person. So microgreens are grown in soil, and there are other mediums and mats that you can use, and they all work, okay? Just in some instances need more work, especially if you're going to do it hydroponically with a mat. You've got to then add the nutrients that you want the microgreens to have. And I don't enjoy doing that, and I don't recommend it, but it can be done and they will grow. And so, yeah, microgreens you will have in soil. Sprouts, not planted in soil. They are washed out a few times a day, put in an airy bottle or some form of place where it gets plenty of air, and just by wetting it a few times a day, after a few days they start sprouting. So light is an issue with microgreens. You need light. Sprouts don't really require that amount of light to grow and to germinate. But growing microgreens does require light, very important. And we'll talk more about that in this class. For the best results, specific types of grow lights can be used as well if you need to enhance your light. If you're in the colder months of your year and the light is not great, and the warmth is not great, then you need to use warmer mats and grow lights. But I'll talk more about that in the class. Yeah, you can decide where your microgreens are going to get the best ventilation, okay, and keep warm, okay, and get the best of the light that you're able to provide for it. So we'll talk again a little bit more about that. But the difference between the sprouts and, the sprouts don't need the same sort of care that microgreens do and consideration. So finally, on this slide, as you can see on your screen, although you use the same seeds for both sprouts and microgreens, you do grow many more seeds as microgreens than sprouts, okay? And the reason for that is some seeds need to grow into microgreens because they're not particularly beneficial as sprouts, where you're eating the actual seed. With a microgreen, you do not eat the seed, okay? You eat the greens. So that's something we're going to talk about a little bit more as well. But let's still look at the overall picture. Why grow microgreens? Okay. Well, there's certain obvious reasons before we come to perhaps the main reasons, is that you don't need a garden. So if you live in an environment that does not have a garden, you can still produce healthy, organic mini vegetables inside your home, on your windowsill or in a bright place in your house. And you've then got organic vegetables right throughout the year, okay? And very nutritious ones at that. In fact, more nutritious than the vegetables, the full-grown vegetables you'll buy at your grocery. And you'll have them ready to pick, fresh as a daisy, fresh, fresh, fresh. So I call them superfoods because they are full of nutrients. And you need the nutrients, okay? You need to be able to absorb the nutrients. Now, let's just digress for a minute here. If you want a strong immune system, you need a strong, healthy microbiome in your gut that maintains the health of the lining of your stomach so that it can absorb the nutrients that you are putting in from various sources, okay? But if your microbiome is not healthy, it doesn't really matter what you put in your mouth, you may not have much of it absorbed. So the microgreens will heal your microbiome and maintain its health, assuming you eat a variety of microgreens throughout the year, all right? And one's talking about microgreens doing this function of healing your microbiome because it has, or microgreens have the highest concentration of nutrients of any food. They are the richest sources of vitamins, minerals, trace elements, enzymes, particularly digestive enzymes, antioxidants. But don't forget, antioxidants are anti-cancer, everything, and anti-aging even. You need antioxidants, and antioxidants are certainly one of the things you will get regularly with your microgreens. Chlorophyll is another benefit, and they're just more beneficial than maybe fruits that you would be eating, hoping to get those nutrients, okay? The other aspect, which is important, is that microgreens also produce protein. Now, that's worth thinking about. Anyway, I will tell you more about that. So really, microgreens is a very practical way of making nutrients available to your entire body through your microbiome. So, give that some serious consideration when you are thinking about the way forward. The fact is that they're tasty as well. So you'd grow them because they are tasty. They add really different microgreens, and we'll talk about those. The different microgreens have different tastes. Some of them very strong, some of them mild, some of them sweet. Okay, so let's just continue a little bit with the health benefits of the microgreens that you can see on your screen now. I just want to make clear why it's so much more concentrated. If you take, let's say, 1 ounce of broccoli microgreens, that has the same nutrients as 1.5 pounds of mature broccoli. So you can now get all the nutrients that you want from broccoli in a microgreen, and basically a handful is what you need. But let's just come back to this word at the top of the screen there. Eating high polyphenol foods is really, really a good place to start with one's health. And, whether you are eating fresh microgreens or whether you are taking tablets, you don't know what's being absorbed, okay? But if you're taking them through microgreens, they will eventually, if you have a problem with your microbiome, heal it and start absorbing those things. So fresh microgreens themselves are also loaded with phytonutrients. And what phytonutrients do as part of this large category of polyphenols, okay, is they lower cholesterol. The triglyceride symptoms of rheumatoid arthritis, which I've experienced as well, will help with those symptoms. Okay, Alzheimer's disease, definitely, you need microgreens. Okay, the phytonutrients in the microgreens, but then the list goes on. Cancer. Okay, really, if you're scared of getting cancer, microgreens with the phytonutrients will certainly help your body once your body is absorbing these nutrients. And the cardiovascular disease will help with diabetes, and it will build a healthy gut microbiome, bottom line. Okay? So you can certainly improve your heart health, because heart disease is one of the fastest or one of the leading killers in senior people today. And so, making or growing microgreens or buying them from your greengrocer is one of the easiest and most effective way to maintain that heart health. And so, the antioxidants in them is really, just that alone is covering all sorts of bases and helping you build again. Okay. And I've mentioned about the nutrient density. I've taken the lowest figure that is available on researches of science papers that I've looked at. And in other words, any nutrient, any microgreen will be 4 times more nutritious than the fully grown vegetable. But in a lot of science papers, it is 40 times more nutritious than the full grown vegetable. And really, it's something one needs to be looking at seriously as seniors of this planet. Okay, we could definitely promote our healthy living and longer living, and the bottom line is it's easy to grow. Okay, the big thing is you need warmth and you need light. Okay, and so in summertime, that's not a difficulty. Okay, in most places in the world. Wintertime, it can be a difficulty. So that's where you've got to introduce the maybe an LED light or a tube for the lighting, and maybe a warming mat to keep the tray of microgreens warm. and possibly even an artificial type greenhouse with a plastic lid over the actual seeds. But we'll talk more about that in a minute as well. So what I want to talk about now is the question of where do we start? Okay, what seeds do we start with? And so what I've done, I've chosen 8 seeds that sort of combined with a lot of different reasons as far as your health is concerned, and we'll talk about now that with the seeds too, but also different textures, and we'll talk about that in a moment. So the feeling of what it tastes like in your mouth might be a preference for you when it comes to choosing seeds. So the seeds you see here, these 8 seeds, are available seeds, virtually anywhere. You can buy them on the internet, online. You can go to your health shop that sells these type of things, or maybe to a plant nursery that also sells these seeds. But you can get them online, and you can get a lot of information online. The only thing you won't get online is soil. They will sell you mats of different descriptions, all that work. I don't use them, but they do work. Okay, so what you must be careful of commercial seeds while we're talking about this is that they're often treated. They're treated with fungi and pest deterrents and so on. That treatment, by the time it gets to a full-grown plant, it's broken down, and those poisonous chemicals are no longer of influence in a full-grown vegetable. But it's very relevant when it comes to microgreens. Okay, you do not want treated seeds, because as are the nutrients concentrated, so would be the poison if you are using seeds that are poisonous. Okay, or if you treat your microgreens with any type of pest deterrents, you just mustn't do it. Okay, that's the bottom line. All right, so I'm going to have a sip of water. Right, you see on the top left-hand image, you see coriander. Now, coriander has a very sharp taste, okay, as a microgreen and as a full-blown herb as well. But it's perhaps a little milder as a microgreen compared to the full-grown plant. But the coriander or cilantro, depending which part of the final herb you would use, not in a microgreen, but as a full-grown plant. So it is a source of fiber, and fiber is absolutely essential to us as humans. We need fiber. It's part of the functioning that we need. So definitely coriander, and we'll come to basil too, they are high in fiber, but they're also high in manganese and iron and magnesium. Okay, the leaves themselves on a coriander are also rich in vitamin C and K and protein. Remember protein, because if you are a vegetarian or a vegan and so on, we need protein. Okay, certainly the coriander would be one of those that would be able to produce the protein, and very, very digestible protein as well. The coriander also has an array of other much less, or quantity-wise, like niacin and other things like that, phosphorus. But there are other microgreens that produce those in more abundance than does the coriander. But the coriander is giving you an overall taste of, everything you need to set up the microbiome and to set up the digestive enzymes to work properly. So it's very important that this actually happens. Okay? The other thing with coriander, it has a very powerful flavonoid which is called lutein. And this is also part of what I mentioned earlier about the polyphenol family. Okay, so it's really big in helping prevent cancer. And when you're recovering from chemotherapy or any cancer treatment, it becomes that particular substance, lutein, which is in coriander, becomes a real good reason for you to make coriander one of the seeds. So I've been sort of talking on about coriander, but let's move to the right of coriander, and we come to broccoli. Now, broccoli have a large quantities of magnesium, manganese, copper, and zinc. Okay, and these are very essential minerals that most people are deficient in. Now, you notice I've used the word essential. Essential is important. So, if you're not getting it from your microgreens, maybe you're taking tablets, but are your tablets absorbing them? Because your microbiome is not fit enough to absorb. So maybe you're passing them out. And you can find out with various medical tests and things like that. But we tend not to go that route. Okay, we often just assume, well, I'm taking it in my mouth, therefore it's benefiting my body. So it may not be. But if you're eating microgreens, there's a much higher chance that your microbiome is going to absorb those particular aspects. So, so that's the broccoli. And the next on the list to the right of that is basil. And basil, as I mentioned when I was talking about coriander, they are a good source of protein. But they're also a good source of many other things, like vitamin E, for example, and niacin. Definitely the fiber that I spoke about as well, but also vitamin A, vitamin C, vitamin K, vitamin B, folate, calcium, iron, magnesium, potassium, zinc, copper, manganese. Wow. Okay. One would need to think twice if you're going to leave out basil. Yes, it does have a flavor, but it's really great. We often, my wife and I would leave some basil in our lemon water the other day as well. But we'd certainly eat basil. I'll talk at the end of the class on how to eat the different herbs or possibilities. You can do it any way you like. There's so many options. But you can also just do it like my wife enjoys, just taking a bunch and eating it. And then, to have a diversity. Diversity is the key when you're talking about microgreens. Okay, don't stick with just one or two microgreens. Grow some of these today, then some of those next week, some of those the following week, and have it, or buy them, whichever buy a mixture of them. Okay, just make sure that they are organic microgreens and haven't been grown with treated seeds, as I mentioned earlier. So, basil is really quite an interesting herb. And you can also leave a couple of your microgreens to grow to full plants and let's transplant them into a pot, and also keeping them in the same sort of environment that the microgreens are in. And you could then, you'd probably have that plant for 2 years that you can cut off the leaves and cook with it and put it wherever you want to. Okay. So to the right of that is chai seed. And I think all of us have grown up with thinking, and correctly so, that chai is a superfood because for centuries it's been used all over the world, including in the East. And it's a great way to up your dietary fiber and also your protein intake. Okay, it not only does it have protein and the fiber, but it also has other chemicals that help the absorption of it, where you get it from other sources like tablets or wherever you want to find it. So chai becomes really almost it supports the digestive function. Okay, maybe that's a better way of putting it. And it will certainly, and that's why I got onto it many years ago, it will help the risk of diabetes, and particularly diabetes 2. So chia seeds are very important in that route. I'm not going to go through all the seeds, but I'm going to certainly mention the bottom left-hand corner there, the radishes. Now, not only do radishes, contain, vitamins A, B, C, E, K, they also deliver calcium, iron, magnesium, phosphorus, potassium, zinc, but that's not all. That's not all. They produce something really important to our health. Okay, they produce essential amino acids. Now, they're not called essential by chance. We have to have amino acids. Okay, and those essential amino acids, all of them, are absolutely the basis of our protein, and we need to be looking at having amino acids for many different functions. And so the radish becomes basically one of my number one choices. Maybe I've got a couple of number one choices, but certainly one of the number one choices. So radish microgreens are really powerful. They do have a distinctive taste, okay, as do radishes themselves, when you eat them as a vegetable, but they're not quite as strong, and you don't have to necessarily crunch the actual root. You actually get it in the microgreen. You get all the nutrients in the microgreen. You also get chlorophyll with this little fella, the radish, and that is, it's like in a sense, a deodorant. Okay, you can use it in those sort of ways. You got a bad breath, you can steep some in hot water, and that will help immensely as well, in a very natural sort of way. So those are the seeds that I suggest that you look at and consider, but they're not the only ones. Okay, I've given you categories of seeds you can look at, and they all have nutrients in them. So the key is not so much, if you are suffering or recovering, let's rather say, from chemotherapy, then go to the ones that really are going to help with that recovery, as I've mentioned now in this class. But then there are also other reasons to get a diversity, and that's the key word. You need a diversity of microgreens, and so you can buy a number of seeds online, or go to your local health shop and see what they have to offer. Now, the other reason to choose seeds, and you'll find this as you grow and it goes further and further, you can decide on seeds that have a crunch. Okay, so pea shoots are a good example of this. They're juicy, they're crunchy, and you know what? The microgreen shoot, tastes just like a little pea in the pod that you open up and eat it fresh from the garden, that baby little pea, and you know how delicious and sweet that is. The microgreen tastes like that. Okay, so yeah, but so do other, like the fava bean shoots as well. They also have a crunch, and so do the sunflower. The sunflower also have a crunch. Okay, so that might be another reason that you decide to choose a particular microgreen, or you might not be fussy and you just want a diversity, just want a variety of microgreens to keep you in your nutrients and the things that you need and your enzymes and so on. You could also be like a chef in a restaurant if you like dining and like entertaining other people. The chefs bring an element of theater using color. And so you can do the same. You can bring a strong flash of color, like purple basil, for example, okay, or red amaranth, or red cabbage, or kale, or rainbow chard, okay. So even oriental mustards bring a totally new color and feeling. So yeah, this is what you can now be looking at if you enjoy the color and working with color, and then knowing that you're going to get the health anyway, okay, but it's just part of the fun of growing microgreens. Microgreens go with a lot of different dishes, and I'll show you at the end of this class how you can actually eat them as well, with some images of them being put on certain types of food. So microgreens have a strong taste, okay? I would say 50% of them have a strong taste. The others not necessarily strong, okay? But again, it's horses for courses. Some people like strong taste, whereas that same taste isn't strong for somebody else, okay? So, when you're talking about mustards and things like that, and rocket, they have their own distinctive taste, and you need to decide. Maybe you experiment first with all the tastes and then decide how you're going to grow into the future for the next 30 years, growing microgreens for yourself and your neighbors. All right, so yeah, you would decide on some of the issues, but now we need to move to how to grow. And I start on purpose with how to harvest. Okay, we will cover on the next slide how to grow. So how to harvest becomes an important aspect if you want to get more than one harvest from the same seeds. Okay, now you might not have known that, but you can get 2 harvests, 3 harvests, maybe even 4 harvests from the same seeds. But to do that, you need to know how to harvest them. So that becomes an important issue then. So if you look at the image on the screen, you will see that there's a microgreen here. And on the left here, I've written microgreens are usually harvested when there are 4 or more leaves. I'm talking about that now. If you harvest them above the first bottom leaves, the leaves nearest the ground, above those leaves, okay, and eat everything else, but leave a leaf or 2, okay, preferably the 2 leaves at the bottom. Now, not all will have, but 90% will have those leaves at the bottom, then you harvest above them. If they're tall shoots, you maybe, and they don't have any leaves at the bottom, then you need to leave about 1 inch above the ground when you harvest them, okay, and then eat what you've harvested and leave 1 inch above the ground for them to reshoot out and produce more leaves. Okay. Now, where to grow your microgreens? Yeah, that's actually an easy one, because these seeds want to grow, and so what happens is you can just follow some instructions, which I'm going to give you now on the next slide. Okay, but you can grow them, on the floor, indoors. As I mentioned at the beginning of this class, take into consideration those things about light and ventilation and so on. And then you start them off in the dark. So they start off in the dark. They must have darkness to start. And I'll show you that in the next slide as well. And where can you grow them? You can grow them in any sort of container. So you can grow them in styrofoam containers that you would otherwise have thrown away. Maybe some of your vegetables or meat arrived in the plastic or the styrofoam. It doesn't matter. The container does not matter. And as long as the container itself is not going to leak substances into the soil, which mostly they won't. Okay, so, but otherwise you can buy trays for microgreens, and they've got lots of holes on the bottom, and they arrive in different sizes, and you can decide on the size depending how much you want to grow and where you want to grow and who's going to eat them and how much space you've got. Okay. And I say again, as I said in the beginning of the class, you must use untreated seeds. The trees must not have been treated with chemicals like they do with commercial seeds for farmers and so on. You must not use treated seeds. So yeah, let's have a look at what you see on the screen right now. You can soak your seeds. I soak all my seeds beforehand. It's not absolutely essential, but I've just become accustomed to the benefits, which means they will sprout a little bit more quickly, and that makes a difference to it. So, but if you don't soak them, then at least give them make sure that you keep them moist. The surface, I'll show you a little bit more about that in a minute. Okay. Yeah, soak them. I would say soak them, and you can't go wrong. Now, you might soak them for 8 hours. You might soak them for 2 days. It actually doesn't matter. Okay. 2 days, they won't be ready to sprout yet, but they would have been softened up. They've absorbed some of the water, and so they're now ready to go into darkness. And so that can happen, and we'll show you on the slide how that happens. So you get yourself in step 1 a container of soil. Put in, doesn't matter how much soil is there, maybe an inch of soil, and you must use organic soil, very important, and I use organic seed soil. All it is, they've taken organic soil and they have sieved it through, or did some work on it, so you've got very, very fine soil. Then it doesn't interfere with a young little seed wanting to come up against a stone or something like that. They come up very easily with seedling soil. Okay. You can buy from your nursery, and you put it in and you tap it down, and just to take out the mountains and the valleys so that the seeds don't all clump up next to each other. That's the main reason you can use a spatula or some description or a piece of wood just to flatten it down. I use my hand. Then you sprinkle the seeds as thickly as you want to, just not on top of each other, which they won't go on top of each other if you don't have any holes or valleys. Okay, so that's why you've patted it down. And so you then sprinkle the seeds, and then you water the seeds. And I use a spray gun rather than a watering can, because a watering can might just make a few holes and dents, and then some of the seeds might roll into those, and then they get in on top of one another. So, but you can, if you've got a very fine watering can nozzle, then you can. Otherwise, just a spray bottle of water, and preferably the water that you drink, use that, because that will be healthy. And then once you've done that in step 2 and sprinkled and watered, now the seeds need to go into darkness. So you can put a wooden plank on top of your tray, and then put it in a cupboard somewhere where it's dark. Or you do what I do, is I sprinkle more soil on top of the seeds. And then that immediately puts them into darkness. But I still keep them in a sort of dark environment. And then you having sprinkled water on top, if you've got a little like an artificial type hothouse with a piece of plastic over it or something like that, that could keep it moist. Otherwise, keep just looking at your microgreens in the dark, from the dark, don't expose them to bright light, and just check by your finger to see if the top of the soil is wet or not. If it's dry, it needs more spraying of water, and so you spray the water on. And so once they've all sprouted, or almost all of them have sprouted, then you can move them to a well-ventilated, bright light area, maybe on a windowsill somewhere. And at this stage, not necessarily direct sun until they've grown a few leaves, then direct sun becomes very handy. And then with watering, water about, whenever the top of the soil is dry, then you water, okay? And if you happen to overwater because you're watering with a watering can, then you must have holes in the bottom of your container, and so that the water can drain out, okay? You don't want water gathering at the bottom of an organic soil container, okay? But do not soak the oil. That is not the purpose of this exercise. So I've shown you how to harvest. You can see in that step 6, the harvesting is above ground level. You do not eat the seeds of microgreens, okay? Remember that. You do not eat the seeds of microgreens, okay? So it's important that the light, after, just looking at growing the microgreens now, if you don't have a lot of light because of the season, then you must put in a grow light, which can be LED or a tube, in order to make sure it'll get the correct rays that it needs. And the light helps add nutrients that I said earlier in the day. Then the second last thing I want to show you is, yes, first of all, before I show you, is an image of people harvesting. And you can see there's a lot of green left behind after harvesting. And that's what you want for second harvests, all right? And I've shown you that. If you have to store your microgreens, I really, there's not, or if you're growing your own, there shouldn't be a reason to have to store them, because you can just leave them on the plant for another day or another 2 or 3 days, and then harvest them when you're going to eat them, on the day you're going to eat them. And, why not? They're there, they're waiting for you. Eat them when you're ready to eat them. Doesn't matter if they've grown a little bit taller in the meantime, doesn't matter. So remember to harvest them with very sharp scissors and knife. You don't want to squash the stem of the microgreen. Then, if you've been given some microgreens, or you've bought some from your local store, then what you do is you take 2 pieces of paper, you dampen the paper, and you put the microgreens between the paper, okay? And then put them into a Ziploc plastic bag, and then put them into the fridge. Don't squeeze out the air or anything like that, just put them into the fridge. The moisture will keep them very succulent and crunchy, okay? Do not rinse your microgreens before you store them, okay? Yes, you must rinse them before you eat them, but not before you store them, okay? So it's an important aspect of storing, is to keep them. And you can, doing them that way with a bit of, between some damp paper and put them into a Ziploc, they'll last 7 to 10 days, okay, and be just as good as you put them in. All right, so some ideas finally of how to eat your microgreens. You can see here a pizza, and you can put your favorite flavors, maybe strong flavors of herbs and microgreens onto the pizza. But you can also, you can see on the left of the screen here, there is a drink. It's a microgreen, wheatgrass and broccoli are the ingredients in there. You can juice them, or you can make a smoothie, or both. And you can see here with the burger on the right, you can also garnish them with anything that you like. There's, it doesn't matter if it's if you buy a McDonald's burger, and then, put some nutrition into it, put some microgreens into it. And if you look at the left-hand side of the screen now, you see a pea shoot, okay, pea microgreen savory pancake. Okay, you can see the salmon in between, and it's It's delicious, but it's nutritious. Okay. And again, you can put whatever taste you want on that savory pancake. To the right of that is a roasted acorn squash microgreen quinoa salad, okay, all chopped up together. So it's great for vegans, and it's gluten free, and it's just a lovely salad. Okay, but the essence of the nutrients, besides the acorn squash, are the evergreens as well. So now you can also put it on a dessert. On the left side here, you see a strawberry chocolate tart. That is a pea shoot pancake where you wouldn't have dreamed of putting it on. Now you can. And if you take let's say a pea shoot, which is then slightly sweet, and put it with the strawberries, you've then got it onto a dessert, and that's great. And then to the right of that is a spring salad where anything goes. It's a super salad when you think of microgreens. Just put whatever you've got into a salad, and you put anything else that you perhaps wanted to chop up in the salad as well. Maybe some tomato, whatever you've made in the salad. You can now look at adding the microgreens non-stop. All right, then finally, we come up with what else could be called a rainbow salad with a lot of different ingredients. It's definitely the most colorful that I've seen. And wow, it would certainly make a difference to our salad. And if you move to the right, this is a roasted broccoli microgreen soup. And wintertime, it's to die for. It is super duper, very tasty. And the soup contains lots of microgreens, okay? Plus the beans and the celery and the sunflower seeds, providing more fat and more protein that you need, the good fat, okay? Very filling, very satisfying. Below that, you can add your own flavor of microgreens on top of a roast beef tea sandwich. Okay? And you can now decide yourself what sort of flavor, and immediately, because of the size and the way you do it, you'll enhance the flavor to your liking by putting on the correct microgreens. And then on the extreme left there, that's a bittersweet salad. A bit of everything. You won't find that sort of color salad necessarily very often, with blood oranges and microgreens and unconventional ingredients, all mixed in. But the microgreens are there as well. So that brings us to the end. And I just want to show you this image, which is wild rice mixed with microgreens. It looks good, it tastes good, it's nutritious, okay? And don't forget to bring in your grandchildren and plant the seeds this weekend, and they can see them growing next weekend. So that will be a lot of fun for the children. So thank you very much indeed for watching the class and being part of the class. And for those that have been watching on social media as well, thank you very much for watching. And I have other classes, and I'd like to see you on them. I have a new set of classes about purpose, creating an idea, and living life on purpose. So you might want to also get involved with that as well. So yeah, I hope that I will be sending out an email for those that have joined now. And Charlene, for example, thank you very much for joining. And I'll send you out an email about them. I hope to see you right at the beginning of the class next time. All right. Thank you for joining. It's much appreciated. Okay. Goodbye to